What's going on, my friends? Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. Today, I'm really excited because I love talking all things money, especially when it comes to building wealth. And today on the show, I'm bringing on a good friend of mine. He's a certified financial planner, a podcast host. He talks all about retirement. And we're going to be talking about the 5 steps to become the 401k millionaire next door. So what are the 5 things that you must be doing with your 401k or your 457 or your 403 or whatever retirement employer sponsored plan you have? What are the 5 things that you must be doing to become the 401k millionaire next door? So without further ado, let me bring on my good friend here. His name is Benjamin Brandt. And let's see, we'll pull him in right here. Benjamin Brandt, he is a certified financial planner. He is the host of the Retirement Starts Today podcast, and he is the founder and president of Wealth City Management over there in Bismarck, North Dakota. Benjamin, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, happy to be here.
So before we hit record here, we were talking about, just different things when it comes to retirement, when it comes to retirement planning. And one of the episodes that you had on your podcast that I had listened to just recently, it talked about these exact steps to becoming a 401k millionaire. And I know so many of our listeners, because I recommend this over and over again. If you haven't read the book, The Millionaire Next Door, again, it's one of my all-time favorite books. I really like the idea of how to become the millionaire next door via your 401k as another tool. And I think there's so many people out there that are wondering, is my 401k a good strategy? Should I be doing it during coronavirus? Should I not put money in the market? There's all these questions. So I thought, instead of answering myself, why don't I bring on somebody who actually does this for a living and helps people with their 401k with building wealth. So, but before we start, give us a little background on yourself. Don't forget to mention how many kids live in your house, because I think that's important. But give us a little background, where you live, what you do for a living, and how we got here today.
Yeah, so I live in beautiful Bismarck, North Dakota. And so if you don't know where that is 33 miles from the geographical center of North America. So we're smack in the middle of the country. And I like to say that I teach people how to retire. So we have a podcast, and our wealth management firm is all around living off of your savings. And when I'm not doing that, I'm at home with my 6 kids, trying not to pull our hair out.
Okay, so you have 6 children, right? And I remember when we first met and you were telling me about this, I was like, I have 2 kids. I'm so weak when it comes to mental toughness. How do you do? 6 children. What ages?
We have now. The school is over now, so when school starts again, we'll have a 7th grader, a 6th grader, a 3rd grader, and 3 preschoolers.
Wow, 3 preschoolers. Okay, so I'm guessing triplets, correct?
Yeah, triplets. Yeah, we adopted triplets about this time last year.
Okay, interesting. So if anybody out there is wondering, I know, like, my wife and I were during the whole coronavirus and the kids at home, we were like, what are we going to do? We have the kids at home. We have 2 at home, 2. And so you got 6, but 3 the exact same age babies. That's impressive. So if anybody, we should be taking advice from anybody that knows anything about mental tough and how to be tough when it comes to investing and saving your 401k. I promise you, Benjamin, you have to be probably one of the people we should be listening to, because you know what mental toughness is about. And also, I think it's important to notice, I want to say thank you for your service. But before getting into what you do today, tell us a little bit about your background, what you did for our country.
Yeah, so after high school, I figured I should probably go to college, and didn't have any great ways to pay for it. And my good buddy lived next door to an Army National Guard recruiter, and he had a really good idea as to how I could pay for college. And so I signed up. I became a combat engineer, not the building kind, the demolition kind. And there weren't really any bridges to blow up or minefields to clear in Iraq, but there were a lot of improvised explosive devices to clear. So that was our job. So from late 2015 until late 2003, wow, I'm really aging myself, to early 2005, we did a deployment in Iraq, and we cleared roadside bombs and supported the infantry and supply routes and things like that. So that was before kids, before marriage. I can't imagine the soldiers that are doing that today with kids and multiple deployments, and really rough. Glad I'm retired. It sounds like another person did that. It's weird to think that that was me, because it seems like so many lifetimes ago.
So then how did you transition from going from military into what you're so passionate about today is retirement?
If I'm feeling really cheesy, I'll say that in the military, I helped soldiers avoid landmines. And now I say I help my clients avoid landmines in retirement.
Okay, I like it. Hey, that works. That works. I mean, I like it. So one of the things that we'll be talking about today is how to avoid some landmines when it comes to your 401k. And for the rest of this episode, when I say the word 401k, it's synonymous with if you have a 457, if you have a 403, anything along those lines. We're just going to use 401k because I think everybody kind of understands and that makes sense. But you might not have a 401k. You have some other kind of employer sponsored plan where it's across the board when we say this. So it's 401k for this episode, but it works with all of these. So when we're talking about a 401k, just to kind of recap, Benjamin, I know most of our listeners are very familiar with the 401k, but maybe somebody's listening and they're like, okay, what is the difference? What's a 401k again? So let's just kind of give a quick overview of an employer sponsored plan.
Yeah. So whether you're talking 401k, 403b, 457, 401a, I mean, there's so many different types. When it comes to the end user, the actual person putting the money in, they're all going to feel really, really similar. So don't get too in the weeds as to what the specifics are. Focus more on the generalities. So the generalities are you put money in, and it's a salary deferral plan. And so you put money in, you get a tax deduction for what goes in, and then you pay taxes on what comes out. So you're saving money for the 60, 70, 80, 90-year-old version of yourself, and you're getting a tax deduction in order to do so. And then your money that is put in that account often gets matched by your employer and then grows tax deferred until retirement. So your compound interest, you don't pay taxes on until you take the money out when you're retired. So a lot of great opportunities to make money and to save money on taxes in plans like that.
So kind of a big recap there is money goes in tax-free, it grows tax-free, and then in retirement, you'll pay taxes on it as income?
Yeah, as regular income tax. So however much you take out, that's what your income bracket is going to be.
And what age can you pull out of your 401k, 401a, 403b, 457? Well, 457 is a little different, but what is then the main age where you're allowed to pull out penalty-free?
Yeah, the general rule is 59 and a half. With a 401k, if it stays with your employer and you have severed service, you could do it as early as 55.
Okay. Yep. And I know with a 457, you have access to the money penalty free at separation of employment. Is that correct?
It could be correct. I'm not sure.
Okay, perfect. All right. So now that we kind of got that out of the way, we know what a 401k is. A couple of weeks ago, we had another episode talking about a Roth 401k. If you're wondering what that is, go look that up on the Money Peach podcast. It's just 3 or 4 episodes before this one. We talked about the Roth 401k. All right. So now let's jump in. You put together a really easy kind of a rule of thumb sheet to follow, and I'm going off it right here. But what are the 5 steps when it comes to really doing right in your 401k so you can retire a 401k millionaire, which sounds crazy when you say the word millionaire, but I think I'm 37 years old. By the time I hit age 60, I think the term millionaire is not going to have the same clout that it does today. I think it's going to be very normal. So we're just talking about being normal or a little bit of maybe average or above average in retirement. So how do we get there? Step 1.
Yeah, I think if you're in your 30s today, you're going to need to have $1 million saved up by the time you retire to have any chance of having, maintaining the lifestyle that you have now. So step 1 is start saving as early as possible. There's this old saying that says the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is right now. So you got to start saving as soon as you possibly can, because you're never going to retire on the money that you save for retirement specifically. What you're going to retire on is the money that money makes through compound interest. And compound interest works the best the longer you put the money away and leave it there. So regardless of what your age is today, start saving as early as possible. With our firm, we work with people that have at least $1 million, right? People that are ready to retire right now today and have at least $1 million. Every single one that I've ever talked to, and I've talked to dozens and dozens of millionaires, they all say, I wish I would have started sooner. Even if they started at 16 with their first job delivering newspapers, they say, I wish I could have started sooner, because they recognize the benefit of compound interest. And the longer you put the money away and leave it set, the better it is.
All right, so let's just do a real quick recap. Compound interest, I think everybody's heard the term, but maybe it's one of those things where I'm afraid to ask the question of what is compound interest, because I'm the fear of, well, I don't want to sound stupid. And also, there's 7 wonders in the world, but if you ask Warren Buffett, there's the 8th wonder of the world. He calls it compound interest. So it is one of the amazing things in this world today. But what is compound interest?
Yeah, so compound interest is the money that you make on your money, and then it's reinvested. So simple interest would be like counting. If you earned a 5% return, you would have $1.05, $1.10, $1.15, $1.20, right? That's simple interest, just adding on itself. But a compound interest is different. So that's saying you earn 5% return on $1. It's $1.05 the first year, but then the second year you're earning 5% on that $1.05. So it's more than $1.10. It's more than $1. So you get this exponential return. It doesn't count by 5, 10, 15, 20. It counts exponentially, which increases much quicker.
And so that kind of goes back to, you hear a lot of people say, all your money is made on the back end of your retirement. So the earlier you start, the bigger nest egg you have towards the end of retirement, you're going to get a return on the bigger amount on the back end. Plus, a lot of that came from, the majority of that came from not what you put in, but what the interest on top of interest, essentially, correct?
Yeah, interest on interest on interest.
On interest, yeah, it just keeps going on and on and on and on. So exactly, it's not a linear curve; it's a exponential curve. You'll see if you ever want to go to any kind of, just type in investment calculator. I think Google now has their own, and you can type in, if I put in this much in my 401k and I do this for 25 years, it'll show you a graph, and it starts off kind of flat. And all of a sudden, as you start moving along, it starts shooting up, and it looks like it goes almost straight up towards the end of retirement. So again, it's interest on top of interest on top of interest. So if somebody's listening to this, they're 40 years old, are they too late to start investing in retirement?
Well, like I said, no matter what age you start, by the time you get to retirement, you're going to say, I wish I would have started sooner. So you can flip that around and say, there's no age that is too late. You got to start as soon as you possibly can.
So it's always like you said, the best time to start was yesterday, but the second best is to start right now. Okay. All right. So with that said, say that they're, your 401k again, or your 401a or 403b, or your 457, that's an employer sponsored plan, meaning this is, you do all the investing through your employer. And it's from what I understand, it's mostly or almost always a paycheck deduction, comes straight out of your paycheck, goes inside your employer sponsored plan. So what the next step then, like we said, step one is save as early as possible. I would say the next thing is you need to open your account. You need to go contact HR, find out where, because people sometimes they have a job, they've been working there, but they don't understand anything about their 401k. And I'm not mad at them. The reason why they don't understand, have you ever seen what goes on in orientation? There's so many things that you're preparing for, and there's like a 10-minute snippet on, oh, by the way, this is your 401k. In a packet, and there you go. So maybe you had that a couple years ago and you just forgot about it. So if you're going to set it up, how much and how do I know how much and what should I be putting in to my 401k? I would say that is your next step 2, correct?
Correct. So what I would tell you to do is start with 10%.
Okay.
Pay yourself first 10%, and then learn how to live on the remaining 90%. And it's like Dave Ramsey says, if you can't live off of 90%, you probably weren't living off of 100%, right? So we got to start with somewhere. Start with that, live off 90% and save 10%, and then split every raise that you get between yourself and your future self. So if you get a 5% raise, increase your 401k by 2.5%, and then increase your lifestyle by 2.5%. So start with 10% and then split every raise going forward.
Okay, so 10%, I kind of like that as a rule of thumb. And really, so if you're choosing to go the pre-tax route, the 401k route, the 457 route, you're doing anything but the Roth. If you choose to go that way, technically, if we're looking at numbers here, if we're putting in 10% pre-tax, it's really not going to feel like 10% of checking account is gone, or 10% of the money that we're making, that we're taking home, because it's pre-tax dollars, correct?
Right. Yeah. So if we're saving in the 401k, yeah, it's before tax. It's essentially a tax deduction.
So it's not going to feel like a full 10%. You might be thinking, well, my take-home pay is say $5,000 a month. So does this mean now $500 is going to be gone? The answer is it's going to be a little bit less than 500 because it's going in pre-tax. Okay. So I have people have asked me that question before, like, hey, I said 10% of my income my income's 5,000, but why am I not seeing the math work out correctly? It's because it's going in pre-tax. So you're taxed on less amount, means less deductions are coming out. So therefore you're getting a little bit more money in your checking account. Okay. So 10 to 15%. Now I had somebody ask me this recently. I'm going to get your take on it. So they're not common, but they are out there. I'm currently one of them. So as a firefighter, police officer, a lot of the people in public safety, they have pensions. Okay. So I know that the city that I work for, it fluctuates kind of depending on the economy, but I looked it up right now. We are putting in 7.63% into the pension system. We don't have a choice. It's automatically coming. It is a pre-tax deduction, but it is going into the pension system every single check. So when I'm basing my 10% or my 15%, do I include that 7.63% or do I not include it?
I would not include it. I would save outside of that. It's the same advice that I would give to someone that is a business owner. Every time you take a distribution out of your business and you invest it somewhere else in your 401k, you're selling a tiny bit of your business and you're diversifying into another portfolio. It's the same thing if you work at Apple Computers and all of your 401ks in Apple Computer stock, you're not diversified, right? Yep. If the economy gets bad, now you've got a career crisis and you've got a retirement crisis. You've got to diversify yourself away from that. There's a lot of pension companies, pension plans that are in a lot of trouble right now. Mm-hmm. You're going to want a diversified approach. So they're going to defer some of your salary automatically, but I want you to ignore that. Not to say that it won't be there, but life is going to be a lot better if you can learn how to live on less, even with that. So you'll be twice as prepared as when you get to retirement, and no one will ever complain about that.
And for those of you who have a pension, keep this in mind. You have been putting into that pension system from day one. It's not like what Benjamin was talking about. If you haven't started your 401k, start today. You started in the pension system day one. So you wouldn't have to be changing any of your lifestyle because you've already had this amount coming out since the very first day of employment. And that's what I'm on the same page there as far as that pension amount. And people have asked, I remember in 2008, I think our pension contribution went up to almost 12%. So it kind of fluctuates depending on, again, how the pension's being managed, what the funds are like. So going back then, step one, start saving as early as possible. Yesterday was the best day to save, but today's the second best day. Step two, 10 to 15%. Let's say somebody was willing to put in more than 15%. Would you recommend them doing that or no?
Well, at some point you're going to run into the top. There's the contribution maximums. I think it's somewhere like 19,500, something like that this year. Somewhere in there, it changes every year more or less. So they're going to cap you out at some point. So do that math. But yeah, the more the merrier. I mean, the more you can save, the better. No one's ever hit retirement and lamented that they had too much money.
Sure. Okay. So step three then. Where are we at on step three then?
So let me check my notes here, but step three is going to be get that employer match. So for most 401k plans, for many 401k plans, in fact, according to this research from Fidelity, 97% of employer-sponsored plans offer a match. I mean, so that's a significant amount of.
So let's just say pretty much all.
Pretty much all.
Yeah, all of them have some kind of employer match. All right, explain what an employer match is, just in case, again, we're wondering, okay, I've heard the term before, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah, so it means you put in $5 of your salary, and they put in $2.50. The amount of match can vary, but it's generally going to be a percentage of what you put in or a percentage of your salary. But it's basically immediate guaranteed return on your money. So if you put in $5 and your employer puts in $5, your $5 immediately turn to $10. So you're not going to beat that in an investment anywhere else on earth unless you're investing with like Bernie Madoff or something like that. So it's a guaranteed immediate return on your money. You'd be crazy not to do it.
You'd be crazy. It's free money too. I mean, it is. We were working with a couple just a month ago. And so they were asking about their employer match. And I said, do you have any documentation on it? They didn't have it. I said, just call your HR department and ask. They called their HR department. They got directed to Nationwide, who is the manager for this employer sponsor plan. They said, what's the match? What's the maximum match? And it was tiered. So it was like 1-to-1 up to 3%. And then it was a 0.5% all the way up to the maximum was 7%. So they would get a 7% match, I think, if they put in 12% or something like that. So I was like, I know Benjamin said 10 to 15%, but if because think about this, there's a significant difference in adding that extra 2% in this scenario to get the match, the maximum match. So if you're somebody listening right now and you're like, man, I would love to have, let's say, a $5,000 a year raise. Well, you can. You just have to make sure you're getting your employer match. And if you're not, that money it's not going to your paycheck. It's going to your retirement funds, which will eventually be your paycheck in retirement. So it is free money. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is, but this one's not. This one it is truly free money. It is your employer is going to give it to you for just investing a little bit more in yourself, not in the company. So I'm a huge fan. You always look at the match. And some companies are different. Like you said, I have a friend that works at American Express, and I don't know if anybody out there is listening that watching and listening. American Express, they do a great job with their employer match. I want to say it was like almost 10% on kind of on the higher end. And then I have other people that work at different companies, and they maybe get 3.5%, 4% match. So, but always I would call your HR department, call your, if you don't know your employer sponsored plan, who it is, it could be Fidelity, Nationwide, Vanguard, call them, find out, they'll be able to tell you and hit that match. So recap: step 1, save as early as possible. Step 2, 10 to 15%. Step 3 is always, always, always get your employer match. 97% of them have a match. So step 4, what are we investing in?
So step 4, depending on your age, the younger you are, the more likely you should do this. But step 4 is consider mutual funds that invest in stocks. So stocks are more volatile. They take more risk. But long-term, stocks have historically beaten bonds and beaten cash and beaten any other investment really that you can think of. Maybe not Bitcoin over the last 10 years or so, but long-term stocks are the place to be. If you're right on the cusp of retirement, you don't want to have 100% in stocks because it can be just too volatile to live off of when you're taking your savings out every month. But the younger you are, the more stocks you should have.
Okay. So, and again, stock means equity. You have some kind of, if you're a stockholder, you have ownership in this company. It doesn't mean you get to call them up and make decisions on how the company's managed, but you do have a small piece. A mutual fund with a mutual fund with stocks in it, Benjamin, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically, 200, 500 companies or so, all with different stocks mutually funded. So you might have, instead of just single stock, like say Southwest Airlines, you might have a whole sector of stocks or the size of the stocks, or maybe it's a fund that matches the markets, something like S&P 500 mutual fund or something like that.
Yeah, and you could even take it, you could even simplify it beyond that, as they have life cycle funds or target date funds. So if you're going to retire in 2020, you pick the 2020 life cycle fund or target date fund. If you're going to retire in 2040, which would be closer to your and my retirement date, Chris, you'd want to invest in the 2040. And then as you get from 2020 to 2040, they're averaging you from heavy stock allocation to a heavier bond allocation. So by the time you get to 2040, you'll have something like half stocks, half bonds, roughly. So it's just like Ron Popeil used to say with the chicken rotisserie: you set it and forget it. That's what we love about target date funds, is you can put 100% of your allocation into that target date fund, and then all you have to do is hang on through the volatility. And by the time you get to retirement, you'll have a nice balanced portfolio. So more stock heavy when you're young, less stock heavy, more bond heavy when you're older, and that's good. They're going to rebalance that, and you don't have to worry about anything else other than putting the money in and holding on.
Okay, so I've had so many people ask me this question: is I'm looking now into my Roth 401k or my 401k, and I have 15 to 18 different choices in what I can be investing in. And these things, I don't know what they mean. They mean, there's some of them say large cap, some say mid cap, some say small, some say globalization, some say like a money market account. What do all of these mean? And so my biggest piece of advice is step 1, like you said, just start putting money in there, right? Put money in the 401k. But then also, depending on your age, depending on how far away you are from retirement, they now have these things that Benjamin just mentioned, target date funds. And so you might look at it, and do you know what increments they go in? Are they 5 years, 10-year increments, or can you actually pick your exact year? What does that usually look like?
It usually looks like every 5 years. So 2020, 2025, 30, 35, 40. Sometimes it's in 10 years, but 5 is probably the most common. And then it's usually probably going to average you in 5% increments. So it's going to go from 90% stock, 10% bond to 85-15 to 70-30. It's going to average you from heavy stock to heavy bond.
And just kind of the difference here, we're not going to get in the weeds on the difference between a stock and a bond, but just kind of think of this. Stock has a higher risk, higher reward. Bonds have a lower risk, lower reward. So as you're moving closer and closer to retirement, as you're moving closer to needing the money in retirement, it makes sense that you're going to go to a lower risk but lower reward. While you have time to make up for a down market, like Benjamin and I, it's higher risk, higher reward in the beginning, and it kind of moves in that direction. So that makes perfect sense there. All right, so step 1, save as early as possible. Step 2, 10 to 15% of your salary, of your gross salary going into your retirement. I love what you said. Every time you get a raise, split the raise, 1/2% or half of the raise goes to you, half goes to your retirement plan. Step 3, always try as hard as you can to get the employer match. So sometimes you might have to increase your contribution to get the maximum amount your employer will give you. I would say do it. You'll be so thankful in retirement that you did that. Step 4, stocks inside your mutual funds. I don't even think you can invest in single stocks in a 401k. I think it's too risky. I've never seen it. I've never even heard of it actually being able to invest. I think that's too much risk on the employer and on the sponsored plan, but I could be wrong, but I've never heard of that. Okay. So those are our big 4. The last one is huge because I see so many people, we work with them on a one-on-one basis or in our coaching programs. And I look at this, I'm like, ooh, what's step 5?
Step 5 is don't touch it. Leave it alone.
Keep your hand out of the cookie jar, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So don't touch it. So maybe people are wondering, well, what do you mean don't touch it? Because there's really 2 ways here that you can access your money, access that money inside, or there's 3 ways, right? The third way is at age 59 and a half, but there's 2 ways before that, and they both kind of have a negative consequence. So let's kind of break those down real quick. The first one is what happens if I just take a withdrawal early?
So you're going to pay income tax on that money, and you're also going to pay a 10% penalty. So you're probably going to lose anywhere from 25 to 50% of what you take out.
Okay, so it's huge. So yeah, let's say that you have $100,000 in there, and for some reason you're like, I'm not into this retirement investing thing. You take out you take out all $100,000. Your income is now going to be increased by $100,000, and you're going to pay income tax on whatever money you make plus the $100,000. Okay,
correct.
Then, because you took it out before age 15 and a half, you are going to pay a penalty. And how much is the penalty?
It's 10% off the top.
So it's like another 10% tax. Okay. So 10,000 of that 100,000 is gone. Okay. Then plus whatever your tax rate is. Let's say you're in the I don't know, the 30 or the 25% tax bracket. So really you take out that $100,000 before age 15 and a half, it's 25,000 to tax, 10,000 of it to penalties. So you just took out 35,000 of your nest egg to access. I feel like that's a huge fee to access that money early. There's not a good option. So definitely don't do that. But another option you see is very popular, and I don't necessarily agree with it because I think there's some situations where it's like, if you're maybe to avoid some kind of bankruptcy or something like that, but is taking a loan out. So how does a loan work with your 401k?
So a 401k loan is you're borrowing against the funds in your 401k.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a $10,000 loan against your $50,000 account balance, and then you're going to be paying interest, which will be credited to your account.
But I always hear people say, well, I'm paying interest back to myself. So why is that still not a good idea?
It's not a good idea because if you get laid off, that money is due right now. I mean, I forget what the exact time is. I think you maybe have 30 days or 90 days to get that money back in there, or it becomes like a withdrawal. It was a loan, but now it's a withdrawal. So you're going to end up paying taxes and paying penalties. And if it's a large amount, I think 401k loans might be capped at like 50,000, but you have to remember that that's going to be added onto your income. And then based on income, there's phase outs for all of your credits and deductions. So you might not get, your student loan interest might not be deductible anymore. Your child tax credits might go away. Your earned income tax credits might go away. So the higher your income is, the less of these deductions you have access to, above and beyond the standard deduction. So you've really got to be careful with that. So a 401k loan could make a bad week even worse if you get laid off, and then you got to figure out how to pony this money back at a time when you can at least afford to put money back in because you've been separated from your employment.
Yeah. And another thing I've seen too is, let's just say that you take out a loan for, whatever amount, $40,000, $50,000. Usually you pay that loan back over the course of 5 years. So which means you're going to have now a monthly payment so your money went in pre-tax, you're now paying it back with after-tax dollars. Okay, that's one thing I see. And then also, if you're paying that back with after-tax dollars and you have to make, let's say you take out 50,000, now that eliminates the ability for you to be putting in what you were investing, pre-tax or even after tax. It takes away the amount you can invest because you only have so much to work with each month, right, in your budget. So if you take out the 50,000 or whatever amount it is, you still have to pay that money back. And so since you're paying that money back, you're now not going to be able to invest as much as you'd like to invest, which is step 2, right? 10 to 15%. Well, let's say you're putting in 15%. Now you have to have this loan paid back. Well, where's that money going to come from? It's going to have to come from somewhere. Most likely what you're going to see is your the amount you're contributing is going to be lower. And when you have a lower amount, it goes back to you're not going to build that nest egg as big as you'd like. And again, I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think if you don't have $1 million, if you're in your 30s today and you don't have $1 million in retirement, you don't have enough. Is that fair to say, Benjamin?
I mean, it's all what you want out of the other end, and it's all based on income. But yeah, I think for people our age, you need to have at least $1 million. If someone retires today with $1 million, that's a nice middle class income. That's $50,000-$60,000 a year when you include Social Security. But you got to figure that if you're going to retire in 30 years, your purchasing power is probably going to get cut in half at least once, if not twice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So meaning that $1 million today can give you with Social Security $50,000-$60,000 in retirement, which today is very livable. But if you move forward 30, 40 years from now, and you're still using that same model of $50,000 to $60,000 a year, it's exactly, everything's gonna be more expensive. Just like you go back to 30 years ago, $50,000 to $60,000 was worth a lot more then than it is today. So it's kind of the same principle there. So yeah, I definitely agree that, $1 million would be 30, 40 years from now is going to be tough this is going to sound crazy, but it's going to be tough to live off of if that's your nest egg. So you definitely have to have more. Today, I think you're fine. So, all right. So yeah, we're coming to wrapping up here. We talked about the 5. So real quick, wrapping up the 5. Step 1, save as early as possible. Step 2, 10 to 15% into your 401k, your Pretax account, or Roth 401k, or whatever it is. 10 to 15%. That way you can get step 3, your employer match. Make sure you're getting the match. Step 4 is consider mutual funds, stock mutual funds inside your 401k, or maybe target date funds if you're not sure what to invest in. Step 5 is keep your hand out of the cookie jar. Don't borrow against it unless you absolutely have to, maybe to avoid a bankruptcy, and definitely don't take an early withdrawal out. The penalty is just way too big. So those are our 5 steps. Benjamin, if people want to know more about what you have to offer, you have some amazing free resources. Your podcast is awesome. By the way, we were talking, he has one of the best intros. The intro music on the Retirement Starts Today podcast is probably the favorite that I've heard. I actually had to ask him, where did you find this intro? It's amazing. So if you want to just listen to the intro, I'll put a link in the show notes to this, but you got to go check out the Retirement Starts Today podcast. But tell me a little bit about your site, what you guys have to offer. I know you have some freebies, and I'd like to hear more.
Yeah, so we teach people how to retire every Monday morning. We talk about the topics on the minds of the modern retiree at retirementstartstodayradio.com. And every Monday morning, we're on episode 140 something or other. But about 15 to 20 something minutes every Monday, we want to teach people how to retire. So our audience primarily is learning how to live off of their savings.
And you do have a free toolkit, Jumpstart Your Retirement Today, your Ultimate Ready Toolkit. What is in that toolkit? What can people expect to find in there when they download?
Yeah, so we got a couple fun resources within that toolkit. It is a super simple retirement budget. So it looks at, it splits your 30-year retirement into 3 10-year pieces. So early retirement, middle retirement, and late retirement. And so you can, I think there's 30 or 40 different line items as to what you can brainstorm what your retirement income might look like. And then there's a couple brainstorm exercises about, what might happen if your kids have to move back in with you. What might happen if your parents move back in with you? What might happen? Do you need to downsize your house, or can you age in place? And then I have an Excel sheet about, looking at a hypothetical retirement. Is your cash flow in retirement going to be linear, or is it going to be dynamic? And so just some things to kind of get your head working about what you should be thinking about retirement.
Okay, and like you said, you have an episode every Monday that comes out. So I have, if you're watching this right now, you can see up on the screen, we have the podcast up there. And then also you can be found at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you guys listen to podcasts, you can find the Retirement Starts Today radio show. And again, we'll put links there. We'll put links to the resources we talked about. Benjamin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I love talking about all things money, but building wealth is probably my favorite thing to talk about, because it's not cutting back and getting on a budget and all these things. It's fun. It's putting money into something that's going to grow. And when you can put your money to work for you, good things happen in life. So thank you so much again for coming on the show. You were great as usual. And we'll have you back on in the future. Again, we'll talk some more retirement stuff if you're okay with it.
The pleasure's all mine.
All righty. Alrighty, my friends, that wraps up another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. You can head on over to moneypeach.com/session 140. That's moneypeach.com/session 140 to hear everything about what we talked about today. The links will be in there. And anything that you have as far as questions or anything like that, we'll put in the show notes. We'll put links to Benjamin's radio show there. And also, this show is actually sponsored now by Smart Money Academy, which is our financial coaching program, where it's a live coaching program. It's not an online course where you can actually meet with me one-on-one in a group or in a group setting. We're going to talk about all things money. Especially, we're going to focus on three things. We're going to be focusing on how to create a budget, how to save at least $500 working with me in the first month, and then also how to pay down debt. We'll be talking about other things inside the program, but we have a 97% success rate based on the students that have gone through this program over the past year. The success rate we're basing on is two things. Number one is, did you save $500 in that first month together? And number two, did you master a spending plan? So if this is you, if you're someone that wants to improve the way you manage the everyday finances, so you could go and you can invest more, build wealth, and do the things with money that you want to do instead of paying on debt and unable to save, this program is for you. We are taking applications because the program does fill up quickly. So head on over to moneypeach.com/apply. That's moneypeach.com/apply. And you'll find out everything you need to know there. You can fill out an application and I will get back to you. So thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for tuning in. And we'll see you guys next week, same time, same place with another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. Take care.